Welcome back to Weather Unfiltered. We know just in time for the weekend that rain is coming back for you in the Northeast. It's not going to be a washout, but a few areas, even to New England, could see between 1 and 2 inches of rain. So just giving you the early heads up. But we certainly know that heavy rains have caused serious flooding in places like Vermont. We saw the waters rise this July, then last summer. And the fact is, we can expect to see catastrophic events like this again and again. Extreme precipitation in the Northeast expected to increase by 50% by the end of the century.
And homeowners are still rebuilding while officials are working to stem the tide. But change comes slowly.
So key to helping protect communities is to fix the infrastructure. And with us now, Senator Peter Welch from Vermont. Senator, thanks so much for being with us. We just showed our viewers, some of the flooding that you've seen there in Vermont. It's been devastating, obviously. What can the state do to help prevent issues like this in the future?
Well, number one, it's not just the state of Vermont. It's the entire country that is being hammered by this changing weather pattern that we have. So the number one thing is we've got to build for resilience. And what that means is if you've got an 18-inch culvert, but you really need a 40-inch culvert, that's what you've got to replace it with. It means that you've got to raise the level of bridges to be able to withstand things that in the past weren't a problem but will be. And every single dollar that we spend on resilience, according to documentation, saves about $318 down the road. Now, that requires two things from the federal government. One, funding, flexible funding, and so that local authorities can make these on-the-scene decisions. And number two, it means flexibility. So this is something that is a real challenge for Vermont, but we're not unique. I know my colleagues have the same problems with their locations, whether they're a red state or a blue state.
So, Senator, given that the work that needs to be done to make the infrastructure more resilient, is this something that absolutely needs federal funding, even though a lot of states are going to be waiting in line for it? Or are there some things the state can do with its existing funds?
Well, the state, with flexibility, can do a lot with its existing funds. It can make decisions about, for instance, a home that's been flooded 3 times in 5 years. Is it time for a buyout so that you don't keep returning with the same problem? And this is where the state, with having more local authority to administer the program, is a much better way to be successful than if you have this managed out of Washington. So that's a major thing that we've got to change in FEMA. They do a good job right in the aftermath of the weather event, but down the road, when it's your bridge that's got to get fixed, your home, your farm, you really need to have much more involvement in the local authorities.
So a couple of years ago, Senator, we ended up passing this huge infrastructure bill, right? Can you give us any details on how much of that money is allocated to resiliency projects like what you're referring to?
Well, two things. Number one, that infrastructure bill was about repairing and improving and replacing what we have. That was not a bill that was about dealing with these catastrophic weather events. We've had 3 100-year weather events in a year here. So that's a separate issue. But what was built into the infrastructure bill was planning funds so that you could take into account, with a new bridge, with a replacement bridge, with a road, with a water system, what was required given the modern reality of our weather. So that infrastructure bill, where we're starting anew, we're going to be able to incorporate best practices given the actual circumstances. But in terms of this harm that's happening with these incredible weather events in Vermont, in Houston, in Hawaii, that's where FEMA and more FEMA funding is going to be essential to address the catastrophes that are occurring because of wild weather.
Well, Senator Welch, so great to talk to you. Thanks for speaking with us here. And we'll see how the weather plays out here. But as you laid it out there for us, it looks like it's going to get a lot worse before it's going to get any better. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. We love the Weather Channel.